It doesn't matter which addiction is your fancy. What matters is that one thing that I constantly see is that what we're seeking on the other side of those addictions is freedom. This is Becoming, the podcast for leaders to think differently with actionable tips in 30 minutes or less to claim your intuition, your influence, and your agency. And finally, get to the truth of what stands between you and who you are meant to become. Many of us believe that once we become that future self, then we will be happy, successful, and complete. This podcast exists to shine a light on the truth that the time is now and your future self can be who you become today. Hello, podcast listeners, and welcome back to a very special episode of Becoming. I am joined with the one and only Abbey Acevedo. We are excited to jump in today. And as always, I want to invite you, if you can, to listen to this episode. And it's the only thing you're doing. Listen to this episode, not while you're walking, not while you're multitasking, but listen to it and bring your full presence to the episode. If you do that, you're going to get nuggets that you won't receive if you are multitasking. So if multitasking is the only option for you, we'll take you as you are. We will meet you where you are and dive in together. So as we wrapped up our fabulous Addiction to Awakening series, one of the biggest things that I see personally in my own journey and with my clients that we work with at the Truth Teachers is that by way of the addictions, that those addictions really limit our expression. And whether it's believing, a story of unworthiness, or it's a pattern that's playing out where you question your self-value or you question your worth of some kind. It doesn't matter which addiction is your fancy. What matters is that one thing that I constantly see is that what we're seeking on the other side of those addictions is freedom. And self-expression and full expression, I really don't think there's a better version of freedom, right? For us, especially women leaders, that are out there listening right now, there's most often, times that you want to say something and you hold back, or something you want to do and you feel limited, or you have to put something first. And so this episode is going to be action-packed to really get to the bottom of what's holding you back and how it feels on the other side. So today, like I said, we are joined with the one and only Abbey, whose personal journey has been one that she so beautifully has summarized as this journey of going from suppression to expression. And so I want to hand the mic over to Abbey. And Abbey, give us some background on your journey and how you began in, that state of suppression and how it led you to expression. And really what I'd love to start with, just for the listeners, is can you give some context to us and actually define what suppression means to you? And on the other side, what expression means to you?
Absolutely. It's so good to be back and see your face, Stacy B, for the video viewers and for everyone listening. So happy to be here again. And yeah, I'd like to start with kind of just this personal story. And of course, when this was happening, I didn't recognize it. It's always hindsight or in 2020. But, there I was as a kid. And I remember this memory so vividly. I was about maybe 5 years old. And we were watching a movie with my family in the living room, just a nice little happy family night. And this really sad part came on the movie. And I'm a little kid. And I stood up and excused myself to go to the bathroom, to the ladies' room. And what I did in that ladies' room is I found myself crying. And after I was done crying in the bathroom, I wiped my tears, put on the smile, flushed the toilet, washed my hands so that people would think I was actually in there using the restroom, and came back out and sat on that floor and just continued as if this emotional suppression hadn't happened, just that happy face right back on. So again, as an adult looking back at that vivid memory, I think that's what kind of started this suppression to expression journey. That was a moment of true emotional suppression where, I didn't necessarily feel safe. And safe is just a safe word, right? It has many meanings, but safe to really express. And again, looking back at family dynamics, growing up in a single household with a mom who was raising, I'm one of five. So we had my twin brother who, we joke and lovingly, deemed the problem child, right? And I had a sister who was a young teen mom, and I had, an older adolescent brother at the time too. So all of these other things, my mom had worked 3 jobs. So there's a lot going on in a family kind of dynamic. So for me, looking back, it's that put that happy face on, right? Be that people pleaser. Don't be the problem. There's enough, chaos and dysfunction kind of, themes playing out in a variety of different ways. Those are just a few to give you examples. So when I add kind of that contextual layer on that as an adult, I'm able to see some of the things we talked about in the addiction series, like the patterns that play out, because even as an adult, and I'd be lying if I didn't say it was even like 3 weeks ago, I find myself in a bathroom crying. That actually subconsciously is my safe place as an adult. And I think the irony now that I have a level of self-awareness around why I'm in there and what's going on, right? It's where you literally let poop go, like literally and metaphorically. You let poop go in there. You let it go and let it be, flush it down, and you have a new kind of level of dealing with it. But I use that just to say also, I have that conscious awareness of why I go in there now, but before I couldn't say why that was. And that talks to the themes and the patterns and kind of just that subconscious behavior that plays out without you actually taking the time to figure it out. So I like that story to talk about kind of how I've landed into this suppression to expression. And I looked up the definition of suppression before hopping on, and I think it so beautifully ties a bow on what we're talking about. There's one definition, and it's a biological definition, and it says it's the absence or non-development of a part or organ that's normally there, that's normally present. So if you think about it, it's speaking also of just as we have, life or trauma, big T, little t, experiences that happen to us, especially as young children where we're so impressionable. A lot of the things that we talk about in our adult lives, when it is patterns, when it is the stories we tell ourselves, where are those roots like self-worth or the programming you talk about, right? A lot of that does for a lot of us stem back to, I'm sure we all have a memory we have as children that affect us as adults still playing out. But I think that's such a beautiful definition, the absence or non-development of a part of ourselves, which is really, if you listen to the episode last week where we unpacked emotions, right? Emotions are the linchpin here. It's that emotional development that I think, there's so much opportunity for us as conscious leaders when it comes to emotions, when it comes to not suppressing that, becoming aware of our emotions, and then choosing that space in between to express ourselves, right? We could have the unconscious behavior to cry, which is good. I still believe in the crying, but then the next step is we have the conscious decision to take another positive action or step or response to express ourselves and even transmute that crying into something beautiful, right? We could use our tears to water plants metaphorically and create something and grow something from it. So that's kind of been my journey in what I've done with a lot of suppression. Like I realized how much I haven't been aware of even what I was feeling. As an adult, I would have these disproportionate reactions, right? I would go from maybe not crying for months or expressing anything, and then there's a dish in the sink and I'm a mad woman, or someone says something or looks at me the wrong way, mad woman, crazy, like just disproportionate expression. So this has also been a journey in balancing that out and grounding it and becoming aware of those so that I can, again, make a conscious choice instead of just reacting to some of these emotional triggers. And for expression, it's the process of making your feelings and your thoughts known. So I've done this in a variety of ways, starting about 4 years ago. I would call my expression journey, where I decided to really make a concerted effort, make a conscious decision to say, hey, like I want to be active in my life. I don't no longer want to be reactive. I don't want to be just a participant watching kind of this unfold. I don't want to hold everything that's inside of me. And at that point, I didn't even know what was inside of me. I just had this feeling like this doesn't feel good anymore. Like there needs to just be a change somehow here. And from making that conscious decision to change, a beautiful path laid before me where I had so many opportunities to go from not having this kind of emotional awareness center developed to developing that. And in that journey, I found my voice quite literally. I've literally been like on podcasts like here or, audible narrating certain projects where, again, I've been able to kind of take something that seemed, like I was powerless, the story I was telling myself, and use that in being vulnerable and authentic and getting real with myself, and then turning that into something beautiful, whether that was a page in my journal, whether that's a podcast, whether that's using my voice to give someone a compliment or to say my own affirmations out loud. It shows up in a variety of different ways, as expression does. But yeah, it's just been this kind of amazing unfolding, and I'm still in it. I'm still here learning what the rest of expression is, but I call it a path of self and soul development because each of our expression is unique to us. That's our gift to this world. I could say something, which I think this is how you introduced me on the podcast. I could say something one way. I could say the same exact sentence as Stacy. And what someone gets from Stacy saying that is completely a different energy, maybe a different download, maybe a different feeling that you would get if I said that same thing. So your voice is important. Your expression is important. Who you are is important. And I think the word everyone is so important too, because that's the word every and one. Everyone, it's everyone, it's all of us, but we're each individual in that same word. We're all, our unique expressions help not only us on our self and soul development journey, but it helps the collective, and it's so impactful. And it comes down to who you're being. It comes down, it's Stacey's favorite quote, it's who you're being. That is your truest, most authentic expression. And sometimes you don't have to do these things, right? When I go deeper into some of the stories that we'll get into, a lot of who I'm being wasn't because of what I was doing. It wasn't because I was doing a project. It wasn't because I was saying something out loud or on a podcast. It was because I was actively making sure I was aware, that I was present in my body, that I was choosing to react 1% better than how a different version of me would have reacted in that same situation. And I always joke because sometimes it's anticlimactic like that. For me, the word be is in my name. And I always joke like, I have to go do this, and success means this. But ultimately my expression, me being able to share my story, it's just me. The word be is in my name because who I'm being, sharing vulnerably, being my authentic self, sharing the messy middle, all of it, not just the beginning or the ending where it's, I'm this, whatever the punch list of success means externally. It's not all of that. The word be is in my name for a reason. It's who I'm being, it's my presence. And that is where my self-expression and yours is so, so important.
A conscious and connected leader and executive team is truly the future of successful organizations. The Truth Teachers are proud to announce that we are now offering corporate packages to create more consciousness in the workplace. If you are looking to impact the C-suite or your executive teams in a powerful way, we help CEOs and teams claim their power, take radical ownership, release patterns and programs that limit their capability to lead, and activate them as conscious and powerful leaders so they not only can impact the organization, but that their conscious leadership can impact all of the clients that they serve. If you're interested in learning more, please click the link in the show notes. And we look forward to speaking with you further about creating conscious workplaces, because those truly are the future of successful organizations. It's so good. One of the things that you said that I want to highlight for our listeners that I think is just, there's so much gold in it, is when we suppress, oftentimes it's because there's so much to do. There's so much, that may be on your plate and you can express later, right? You can you can deal with it later. And I think what your story also illustrates for our listeners is that not only is it so important to express through the process, right? But also it's important to really understand that where you bottle yourself up, where you tend to hold back, is where you need to really put your focus. Because in this process of, like you've so beautifully said, going from suppression to expression, part of the key things is to see where you're holding back, because that's where your voice actually is needed the most. That's where people need to hear you the most. That's where they are going to hear what you have to say differently than the next person that you might think is saying the same thing you want to say, but it's the way in which you're going to go about it that is your differentiator, because there's only one version of you, like Abby said before. And so I think that that's something to really highlight. And also, like you said, the emotions. I think as people, I know I was deathly afraid of what's on the other side of anything that's not a positive feeling. What's crazy is what's on the other side of going into the negative or less than positive emotions is freedom. We think that we're going to, at least this was true for me. I thought I was going to like feel the negative or go into the negative and kind of get lost in this
Never
abyss
come
and
out.
never bounce back. But what's interesting is as soon as I go there, it's almost a faster process. And so all of this to say that whatever you're suppressing, whatever you're excited to talk about, or even the things that you think can wait, take this podcast as your sign to highlight and to dive deep into those areas and let those parts free. Because if you do, there is so much magic and opportunity that we can't even talk. We would be here for weeks if we sat here and talked about all of the possibilities, but let this be your sign and guide to go deeper into what you're suppressing.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful. I felt the same way when you said, like, I'm scared to go into the vulnerability. I'm scared to go into the expression part because I don't know if I'll ever come out because it doesn't feel so good right now. But I would challenge that to say what you find at that. You use the word, I felt like I was going to lose myself. But what I found is I actually found my true self, the self part of the expression, of the expression, and the various ways or modalities that I chose just led me to learning even more about the real self. It's like peeling off all of these layers. So it's not about getting lost. It's about finding what lights you up and finding your truest self and finding the joy and finding who you are. And yes, it's the unknown. So again, as humans, we like to know what we're getting ourselves into, but it's what we're getting to know is who we truly are, and who we truly are is more magnificent and amazing than we could even put into words on this podcast. Ironically, I can't express it when we're talking about expression. And when you start to get a taste of what will unfold and how you feel and you witness your own becoming, like it's amazing.
Yes. Well, and I love that you said that, because I think what I was so afraid of was losing myself. What I was really saying is I was afraid of losing the image or the ideal that I had set. And it's like what's actually on the other side is finding, right? Discovering your true self, which is even bigger, greater, and more magnificent than the ideal or image that we all hold, that we're taught we're supposed to create, right? Because with suppression, that's an image, right? We have to be a certain way. We have to hold back to be safe, or so that we don't put a burden on someone else, whatever the belief might be. And so it's interesting how it's really it's opposite of what you would expect when you just let yourself go. And for the control freaks out there listening, I know I was one of them. I still am, right? It's still for me sometimes. This is very true as far as like thinking you're losing control, but that's all an image and an ideal as well. We really aren't in control. So
we talked about it a little bit too, the word suppression. That just, when you even say it, you feel like my shoulders just instantly, like I just feel so constricted even saying the word suppression. And like we talked about with the episode on emotions, right? Emotions are energy in motion. So I alluded to this earlier where I noticed I would have these disproportionate reactions. And that also goes back to just because it has to come out, it has to release in some way. So we can only suppress for so long. And I think that's what I also found out on my journey. Like when we talked about whether that comes out in dis-ease or disease, or whether that comes out in these explosive reactions, or whether this comes out in different patterns later. Like, this is why it's so important to be aware of the addictions we talked about, because those are different ways that the suppression does manifest. Whether you are conscious of it or not, it's still playing out. So it's almost, it's just so empowering and liberating to be able to see that and then kind of change the trajectory and be able to go from suppression to expression.
So good. So obviously at Truth Teachers, our focus is on creating conscious leaders so that they can create conscious companies. How do you feel expression, or even being exposed or vulnerable, how do you feel that is a key to conscious leadership? Or what are your thoughts around that as it relates to conscious leadership?
I think it is the most important, underrated, gift that this is why we're sitting on this podcast. I think it is the most important thing that we can do, not only for ourselves, but for other people, again, as a byproduct, because it all starts with self. And that's why I like the word self-development, self-empowerment, right? It starts with self. But there's a beautiful quote by Marianne Williamson, and I think the end of it is something like, it's not just in one of us, it's in all of us. And as I let my light shine, I unconsciously give others the permission to do the same thing, right? It's one of my favorite quotes, but I think that's such a profound quote that talks about conscious leadership as we work through our own journey to go from suppression to expression. And we start to become aware of these things, as we start to shine a light on our addictive patterns and stories we tell ourselves, and the disempowering thoughts, and being more conscious in our own path. That is the true work that will have the byproduct of being a conscious leader. You're leading your own life. So by example, you're a living testament. When you're in integrity that way, there is absolutely no way that you're not making not even a ripple effect, but a tidal wave of change and impact of those around you. So that's how I feel about it. When you're showing up and doing that, you're showing others that, hey, I'm alive, right? It's scary to be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm coming to work today and I had this personal thing and it's really bothering me here, right? You share that story with your team, and it's relatable. There's probably someone in your office, whether it's a client or whoever you're working with, that is also, they know what that feels like. They might have something going on the same way at home. So you're relatable. You're a human. You're not just a producing, working productivity machine that has no emotions, feelings, human ties. And one of the basic fundamental needs we all have is, like we've talked about, just belonging, just to be seen, like just to understand that we all have the same experience. Even though we're having these individual experiences where we're able to express individually, we're all having the same collective experience of having an individual experience. So it connects you. So by you connecting to yourself, you're therefore connecting to others. And then this creates an inclusive environment, but also fosters creativity, innovation, diverse thought perspectives, which is then, how you become the productivity machine, because it's just like these little sparks that just keep getting ignited, like one by one. Like, I love this idea. I lit an incense the other day, and I was trying to light up 3 at the same time to put them in different areas. And I had like lit one up, and then I put the other 2 to it. And then they were all like this one big flame when all 3 of them were together. But then I took them apart. Like, I took mine out and I had my flame, but these 2 were still flames. And then I took them apart and we were all each our own little flames on these 3 incense. Then I put them together. We were this one big flame, right? So this symbolism or metaphor, that's what I think conscious leadership is. The one incense that lights up, but you can use that one incense to light the other 2 incense, or light the next one. And together you can come together and be a bigger flame, but each individually you have your own unique flame that's also light. So that's what I think about conscious leadership and why it's so important.
So good. Your metaphors and how you dissect words I love it. I live for it. It gives me life. I love that you connect it back. It's so beautiful. So has there been a time in your journey that you could share with listeners where, like, you were in the workplace, or personally or professionally, where you were in the workplace, personally or professionally, where you didn't feel fully seen. You couldn't you didn't feel like you could fully express yourself. And so you did suppress. And what were a couple of steps that helped you come out of that suppression and actually kind of course correct into expression?
Yeah, there have definitely been times like that where I have felt not seen, which then the story I told myself was not valued, and thus therefore spiraled into self-sabotage. And we go back to episode 1, right, to re-listen to your whole Addicted to Awakening series here. So the short answer is yes, absolutely. And I'll skip right into what I did about it without going so into detail. But I believe that every situation that we're in is just a mirror. It's just a learning opportunity to have an opportunity to go deeper into our self-awareness. And it's never about an external thing. It's not about the person who didn't see me. It's not about the promotion I didn't get. It's not about the client I didn't land. It's not about any of those things. If I'm feeling like my idea is not being recognized in a work environment, I would ask myself, hey, why is this eliciting a certain emotional reaction in me? What's actually going on? Where maybe in my relationship, I just had, a fight with my partner, and it's like, I'm not feeling seen in work because I'm dealing with this personal not feeling seen. And then further, the reason I'm not feeling seen in my relationship is because I'm not seeing seen for myself. I'm not recognizing that I do offer value, and therefore I might need to work on something that helps me cultivate the remembrance, whether that's looking at like past awards or maybe some testimonials I got from clients, or not that it's about that external thing, but the exercise is about me looking at why I'm feeling unseen by others. And usually you can get your answer by doing the reverse. It's because I'm feeling unseen by myself. So where in my life is it because I don't feel like I'm achieving something and I'm not feeling seen? Well, I've achieved many things in my life. Let me remind myself. Or I can also remind myself I don't need to achieve anything. Maybe it's just I have to sit here and remember to get back into my body because I've been ignoring my emotions in my body for the last week. I haven't gone to the gym. I haven't meditated. So like I'm not feeling seen by myself because I haven't given myself that own time. So often whenever I feel like something like X, I live by my own personal kind of tool that I just alluded to. I'll like purposely try to do the opposite so I can start cultivating new different emotions. So if I'm feeling like, oh, I'm nervous that I'm not going to bring in X amount of money. Okay, that's like a fear-based issue going on here with money and value. So let me go buy a coffee from someone in the line before me. Even if I have $10 in my bank account, right? It doesn't matter. I'm still going to change that energy and perspective in my behavior to say, I'm worth money. It's an energy exchange. Where can I offer this to somebody? That instantly buying a coffee from someone in the line before me, instant dopamine hit. Great. I'm back on track. That's going to affect the rest of the decisions I make for me. If I'm feeling like I'm not lovable, I will go call a friend, go hug someone, hit up my nieces or nephews and get that love vibe going. So I'll just try to do the opposite of that thing I'm feeling, because really it's going back to that, how I'm expressing myself, how I am or am not showing up for myself, not about the actual thing on the outside.
What you just said, which I love, is ownership, which is one of our core values, right? At Truth Teachers, is ownership. Because what I just heard you say, and I think is such a big takeaway for our listeners, is if you move through life owning what's happening, in the sense like Abbey just shared, that life is a mirror to you. If you can constantly check yourself and take ownership of what is this showing me about me, that's going to allow you to take matters into your own hands and course correct so that you fully own your life experience, which means you change it to create the life that you want. And so I think that's so beautiful in what you've just explained, is that ownership is such a core piece of what we're talking about for you to transition from going to suppression to expression. It's owning the fact that you're the one responsible for your suppression. No one has actually asked you to go into the bathroom and cry privately. Yes. For our YouTube listener, viewers, yes. You can see Abbey snaps when she agrees. But it's really true. And I think that the more that we can start to look at our lives from this place of ownership, that's going to really help us connect more deeply to what's going on so that we can make change for good. So, Abbey, what would you say to our listeners if they are in a place where they can identify that they are suppressing in some area and they want to express? What is a quick exercise or maybe a couple of tools, a suggestion that you could make to them so that they can start to actually take action?
I have 3 quick hitters just as we approach the finale here. First thing I would offer that has been instrumental in my own journey is finding like a place, a set place, right? I'm a firm believer that spaces hold energy, and the more intention you can put into a set place, because it's like going to the gym. You might not always want to go there, but when you're there, it has that energy of what you want to feel when you're there because you've made it. So I took a closet, I just got rid of all my clothes in there and I made it a meditation room, for example, right? That is my place, whether I want to step in there or not. The minute I step in there, it's an automatic upliftment and I know exactly what I'm in that room to do. So whether that's outside for you, by a tree, a room, a closet, I would find a space that when you go there, it's like when you go to the library, you get in that energy, right? When you go to work, you get in that energy. So that's been one of my favorite tools, is cultivating a space that when I step in that space, I know exactly what I'm there to do. And that's ironically because I've cultivated that. I step in there and it's like these downloads come through, this creativity comes through. Like I can just connect really quickly and easily because I've trained myself to be able to do that in that space. So that's one. The second thing I would say to do, which one of my favorite tools is EFT, or emotional freedom technique, because it allows me to actually express out loud. I'm a very vocal person and I process things vocally. And I love it because it's not just like the toxic positivity aspect, or people don't believe maybe that affirmations work. I believe they do. And that's a whole different episode, but they might not feel like, hey, when I say I am worthy of love, that might feel a little bit resistant for someone where they're like, well, I don't really believe that. So it feels weird saying it. And I get that. So emotional freedom technique allows me to actually say how I feel in the moment and just be honest and authentic with myself and vulnerable and straight up, like take whatever is inside, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, not judge it, and just say, hey, I feel like I'm not worthy right now. So that feels so true in my body because that's the experience that I'm having. But then you work through a series of tapping on energy points or meridian points throughout your body to help release some of the stagnant energy and emotions, which is what we talked about in the past episode, how to unpack emotions. This is something that's somatic. You can tap on your body. So it's like a combination of mind, body, spirit, kind of all in one modality. Love, love, love it. Has changed my life. You do it for 10 days, try it and report back. Leave us some comments. I guarantee you will notice a shift and some cool things happening. And the third is like the most anticlimactic answer, but it's playing. I started this episode with like being a child at 5, right? And not being able to develop some of these brain functions, or like being stuck at like a certain place with the suppression from that memory. So it's about being a child again. Tap into that inner child, recultivate that relationship with that inner child, but go do fun stuff. That there's nothing more, I believe, that teaches people about themselves more than experiences. Not even from like a like linguistic programming or neuroscience perspective where you're creating like new neural pathways when you have new experiences, but just because you can find out what you like. I like going to the park and playing on a swing. Oh, I don't like mud, right? I like going to this type of modality. I don't like this. You will start learning what your preferences are, what lights you up, what you don't like, and it's just so much fun. And when you're having fun, it's the ripple effect in the opposite of like the addiction to awakenings. It's a ripple effect to step in, to go from that lower emotional vibration all the way up to joy really, really quickly, which then helps you make different thoughts, which helps you make different reactions, behaviors, etc. And it's that ripple effect. So those would be my top 3 for anyone who's just looking for a quick place to start.
Yeah. There's so much gold there, because just a final thought around this, I think the most common thing I see in the pathway of, a women leader, and frankly man or woman leader that comes to us, is they first have to unearth or uncover their suppression. What's holding them back? How do they really get in alignment with themselves? And then they need to actually start having fun, because part of what happens as visionaries is if we aren't having fun and we're not satisfying that part of ourselves, we actually start to destroy things. If you're a visionary out there, I'm sure you've built something and then deconstructed it just as fast. I know that I've done that. And so if you're going through that, or if you're at a place where, you may be wanting to, go from destructive to constructive, have fun, go and explore something and try something new. Try a new date night, or, just mix it up. And it's definitely a source of so much insight and breakthroughs, so that you can really start to connect with that part of yourself. So, Abbey, this has been fantastic. Any final words as we wrap up today's episode?
I am so excited just to hear each of your journeys. Leave some comments, reach out to us, let us know how your journey of suppression to expression is going. And as always, we are here to support you on this ride. So please keep us posted. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Abbey. Are you experiencing change and breakthroughs as you listen to Becoming? If so, show us some love and hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and share an episode. I love bringing this content to you each week, and together, listener by listener, we can wake up the world. See you next week.